Welcome to the Cam and Joe Show. My name is Joe Steele with my good friend, Cameron Elkins.
Good morning, buddy. How are you, man?
I am fantastic.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. We get to sit with, so last week we had Larissa Childers on. She talked about therapy in Sutter County and talked about how she got all over hours. Now we've got another therapist who's in the process of getting full licensing, Angelica Homer. Good morning, Angelica.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Fantastic.
I'm super excited for today. I'm super excited to have you on. When leading into February being Love Month, Joe and I were talking about, who can we have on the show that's going to talk a little bit more about identity and love.
Yep.
And we started to talk more about it, and we're like, dude, we need like marriage therapists in here. We need anyone that can speak on identity and love. And I mean, potentially if somebody finds himself in any sort of crisis, oftentimes I feel like it is they're in a spot where they're reaching out, they're seeking something, right? And if people don't have somebody in their corner, they need to seek out a third party, and that's where, in my opinion, that's where that therapy or that therapist comes in. So let's. I know a little bit about you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited
It's
to
gonna be
dive in.
awesome, yeah.
So for those who are watching or listening to the podcast that don't know about you, the floor is yours. Let's hear a little bit more about your journey, why therapy, and how that fills your cup.
Yeah. So I like to say I wanted to be a therapist before I knew what a therapist was. I really wanted to help people. So when I was younger, I didn't really go to therapy, although I definitely could have benefited from it.
Sure. Sure.
But I went into my undergrad at Whitworth University, which is in Spokane, Washington. And I studied there for 4 years. And I knew going into it that like therapy is what I wanted to do. So with that, I knew I wanted to study psychology, and I actually didn't change that as much as normally people would.
Sure.
So I graduated in that from Whitworth, and then at that time, actually, William Jessup was like my second choice. I always thought I was going to go there, but I'm also a dancer, so I wanted to study dance, and Whitworth had dance.
That's awesome.
But William Jessup added a program while I was in my undergrad, so then I was able to come back to California to get my master's at William Jessup, which is super important to get your master's in California if you want to practice in California, because California is like one of the hardest places to get licensed.
Like in everything.
Like in everything. So I was like, well, I need to get my bum back there if that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I graduated from Jessup in 2021. So I went through it, and we were on Zoom and doing all that. But
Oh yeah. Wow.
yeah, so that was interesting. My first therapy experiences where we started in person, and then we went fully remote. So I got really good with Zoom.
Yeah.
And now we're back in person. So I just like helping people. It's really fun. It's a unique way to like sit with people, and I've been able to sit with people through like many phases of their life, which has been really cool to like build that relationship with them. I also think like therapy is so critical because it's just an unbiased opinion. Like if you were to go, which I think obviously you should talk to people in your life, but they're always going to have a buy-in. Like
Sure.
if I'm considering moving and I ask the people in my life, they're going to be like, give me advice, but they're also going to be thinking about how that affects them.
Yeah.
Versus your
100%.
therapist is just like, what do you want?
Unapologetic, transparent third party. Yeah.
Oh, and that's super important because, like you were saying, it's like everyone has an opinion based on it. Anytime I ever get asked questions like that, my answer is, okay, why are you moving? Like if somebody's gonna move, I'll use the move thing. Why are you moving? Because it's hard. Okay, why is it hard? And I'll just start playing that. And normally they still end up moving, but I'm like, you got to ask yourself the hard questions because things don't get easier if you move.
No.
Yeah.
If you live in California and you move to Florida, you may have more financial freedoms, but it doesn't mean you're free from your problems.
No.
Right?
Totally. Yeah.
No. Because whatever built you in California is going to travel with you because it's your own.
Exactly.
Your own ability or inability to save, your own ability or inability to build credit,
Precisely.
and everything else, or run a business.
Oh yeah.
From a therapy standpoint, what over you graduated with your undergrad? What year?
2019.
So in the bachelor's while you were studying therapy or
Just I got my major was in psychology, and then I double minored in sociology and dance.
wow.
That's awesome.
That's so awesome. So when you were in your bachelor's up in Washington State, was there ever, as part of the degree, clinical time where you get to actually meet with people, or was it more kind of
No,
book setting how to?
it was a book setting. We for one of our projects we had to go to therapy,
Sure.
which was
Yourself.
interesting. Yeah, we
That's
ourselves
awesome.
had to, and that
That's
was
awesome.
also a
Yeah.
requirement in grad school. Is you
Yeah.
had to, I think, go to like 20 hours of therapy.
That's
so
awesome.
that's
How was that? How
amazing.
was that as in? Tell us about your first therapy setting in your bachelor's. Was how eye opening was that?
Yeah.
Honestly, it was really bad.
Yeah.
Um,
you walk out like I need to do this.
I was really
Wow.
like, it was not, I struggled with it. I like
Sure.
I remember going to my professor and being like, that was horrible. Now, now I have so much more perspective.
Sure.
It was a grad student, like in the grad program at that university. And I think that they were just trying to dig too deep for a first session.
Sure.
Gotcha, yeah.
Like, so when I reflect back, I'm like, oh, that probably would have gone somewhere if we had
Sure.
a relationship.
Sure.
But that's the importance of like having a therapeutic
Yeah.
relationship. We're now with my therapist, because I still go to therapy, which I think
Yeah.
almost every therapist should at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have that reference, because we're just getting dumped so much.
100%.
But if she was to poke at those things, I wouldn't be jumping up and down, but I'd be okay with it
Sure.
because there was a relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So those therapists knew coming in that it was students per
Mhm.
se. So
Yeah,
a
yeah.
little bit of even bias there because
Yeah.
it's a school setting and
Oh, but I can
they're
only-
trying to grill.
But I think it's awesome that you're like, this is the craft I want to go for, and then
Oh,
you
it's
have to
great.
submit yourself to that craft.
Yeah.
I love that.
Like you become a contractor so you can build something,
I love
right?
that.
You have somebody else build your house. It's a nightmare. You're like, no, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope. You put the molding on wrong.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Why'd you do it that way? And so I bet you did you have any of those thoughts when you were sitting in there of like, why are you asking that question?
Yeah.
I would have asked,
Yeah.
No, seriously.
I-
How does that make you feel? Sorry. I apologize.
how does that make me feel?
Yeah.
Ask it that way.
I don't think I knew some. I didn't know as much as I know now, but I remember just sitting there and being like audibly uncomfortable.
Sure.
Like I was like,
Sure.
I want to get out of here
Yeah.
really bad.
It's funny.
And then we had to write a whole report about like what we learned, and I was
Not much.
yeah.
Submit. Angelica Homer. They're like 2 words here. Well, yeah, they could have done better.
What'd you learn? I'm fine.
We
Okay.
don't say I'm fine in that therapy. That's
Learned how to
awesome.
set a boundary.
So that was
Nice.
your time. Boundaries, like last week.
Yeah.
So that was your time up in Washington. You come back. Shout out to William Jessup. My wife has her master's from William Jessup as well. Incredible school.
Yes.
Now going from your bachelor's into your master's, continuation of the requirement to go to therapy, right?
Yeah.
through the
Yeah.
master's program
Well,
as
the undergrad, we just had to go to 1 versus masters. You have to go to 20, and they like break it up within like that time.
Cool.
Because the program was like 2 years and 4 months or
Yeah.
something like
Gotcha.
that.
Yeah.
It was like, and you had to get it written off by your therapist.
Awesome.
But it opened up the door that I just kept going because
Sure.
it was really beneficial.
And was that the same therapist through those 20 hours?
Mhm.
Wow.
I-
And
well-
is that the same therapist that you still see today?
Yeah, I guess I did see someone briefly, and then it didn't work out. But yeah, most of my hours and the therapist I still see today,
That's awesome.
because our faith and our belief systems just align. So
Sure.
Gotcha.
I
Yeah.
probably will see her for a very long time.
That's awesome.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And tell us a little bit more about the differences between sitting in that first therapy session through your bachelor's and then that first therapy session in your master's, obviously having grown that much more and matured
yeah,
that much
absolutely.
more. And now
Mhm.
you know that much more, both from a practical and, educational standpoint.
Yeah.
What was that like? Can you remember back to your first?
I can.
first
So I
couple?
saw someone right before the one I currently have. And I remember in that situation, I didn't realize how critical it was for me to find a Christian therapist,
Sure.
Mm,
because I was sitting there and the therapist was fine, but she was giving me advice that like contradicted my morals, or not even
Sure.
advice, because therapists don't give advice, but her ideas, which I could understand the root of the idea,
Sure.
was contradicting like what I would want.
sure.
And so then I was like, okay, she's fine, but that's just not my fit. Which
Sure.
therapists, you need to find your fit for
100%. It's like it's a friendship.
Yeah, and it's okay to
Confidant.
advocate for what you need. So then when I found this one that I have now, it was so different because it was obviously being a therapist, going to therapy, like you understand what they're doing and why they're asking you these questions, or to some degree. But it felt different. It was just, and she took time to like actually just sit and understand.
Sure. So, to ask a follow-up question on that. So, at this point, it's a professional opinion. In your professional opinion, do you believe somebody should find a therapist that matches their faith, or should they be unbiased in that as well?
I think.
Ooh, that's a good question.
To me, so what I picture, in therapy, we learn a lot about like being culturally appropriate and acceptive, which means that you have to ask the client like what their parts of their culture that is important to them.
Sure. Yeah.
I view Christianity as like being culturally competent of it.
Sure.
And so I think if it's a big part of the client's life, then they definitely should have someone who is either willing to allow them to explore that or has context on how to.
Sure.
For some people, I have clients who that's not something they want to talk about at all, and that's fine. We won't talk about it.
Yeah.
But other ones, it's like, no, to understand me, you need to know this and be allowed
100%.
to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think,
and to create an open space where they can offload whatever they're going through or walking through or have been through, right? From so you've now been practicing how long now? How long have you had your own client load or caseload, or call it what you will? How long have you had individuals coming to seek you out
I think
in a therapy setting?
I think it's been about let's see, maybe like 3 years.
3 years in?
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Good for you.
somewhere around there.
And obviously without giving names, what do you see as the reoccurrence in issues? There may be a better way to ask that, but what are you seeing as like one of the things that you end up talking about a lot with
What's the consistent medium across all of them?
Yeah.
So what's the thing, no matter what their belief system is, what is the thing that is like, that's more consistent?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, there's probably a few things, but I think one of the biggest ones is just this identity of self, because people don't understand themselves.
Sure.
They don't then love themselves.
Yeah.
And so they're not willing to advocate for what they need or their boundaries or their feelings at all.
So self-love, self-respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amen to that.
Well,
I think there's a lot of continuity between what Larissa was saying
100%.
last week.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's a context that, at least what I look at, is there's a difference between loving yourself and self-love, because you can love yourself to the point where you're excluding yourself from the community element. Like you only love yourself in your own way, right? But in order to truly accept yourself, you have to be okay with the things that you have in whatever setting you're in.
Yeah.
So you're not suppressing that part of you.
Yeah.
Would you say that you see people suppressing themselves more often than not?
Yeah, definitely. I think that people they like to like kind of be like a chameleon, and like they'll have how they feel, but then they'll just blend in.
Yeah.
And then they come and they're like, I'm confused why it didn't work out. And I'm like, well, you weren't being you. Like,
Yeah.
So relationship advice, because we're in love month, that leans right into it. What to you from the outside, somebody comes and talks to you about relationships, what is something that you look for in that, or even what's something that you look for in a relationship that is safe to you? This is safe. This is a good place to start from. And then from there, because there's too many variables if you start going for the whole relationship. What's a safe element that you look for?
Well, I see couples, and I also see a lot of individuals, which some of the individuals are in relationships, some aren't.
Yeah.
A lot of times for people that aren't in relationships but want to be in one thing I look at is like, well, what do you actually want?
Sure.
Like before you get in a relationship, what do you actually genuinely looking for? And there's not a right or wrong, but that person needs to know what they're looking for. Because a lot of times they're just like, oh, I just want to be in a relationship. And then the first person comes around and they're like, oh, that's great. And I'm like, but did you want that? Like, and then we're, 3 months in and they're like, I'm struggling. I was like, well, did you ever figure out what you wanted?
Yeah.
And they have no idea. So I'm like,
yeah,
I think that's the biggest one, because if you don't know yourself and what you want in a relationship, you're not going to get what
Yeah.
you need. Like,
Yeah.
maybe you will by some random like coincidence, if there's coincidences,
Sure.
but it's not going to be
No.
actually what you want. And then when you're in one, I think that's a continuing process of
Sure.
you might not know what you wanted, but you have to reassess. Is this the right communication?
Yeah.
Are we doing activities together? Like, are we putting effort in?
Are you operating, or the question I would think is, are you operating out of fear?
Mm-hmm.
Are you literally with this person because you're afraid of being alone?
Being alone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, being isolated. That was something when I was dating Regina, something I had to overcome. Having 3 older brothers, always being around people. I was so used to being around people. I didn't like being by myself.
Yeah.
So if I had a minute by myself, I'd be like, okay, where can I go?
Sure.
Who can I talk with?
Sure.
Mhm.
I didn't like it. And then the more and more, and the older I got, the more I enjoy nature walks or getting by myself and,
Yeah.
and quieting myself down and kind of enjoying that. And so, but my wife was the one going, you don't like being alone, do you? And I'd be like, hey, we should hang out. She's like, you should be alone. Like, you need some time. And it's also because she's an introvert, right?
Sure.
So there's that element of like,
Mhm.
oh. So I think that it's important to have, at least from my experiences, have somebody that challenges you in a loving way. But if anything is created on fear, it's going to crumble.
Yeah.
Mhm.
As soon as you're like, I have to have you. No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
That's kind of a scary thing. What is one of the craziest, like, again, no names. We're going to keep people safe. But what's one of the craziest things you're like, really? That's odd type of a thing.
Oh
that's
yeah, like a head scratcher. Like
where you're even trying to process. You're like, that is just a weird way to look at it.
Oh man, I don't know. There's so much stuff that, and I think that's it could be crazy for me, but completely normal for them.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, that's why we have so many different classes of people. Like,
Yeah.
class in the mindset. Like, you have different personality types,
Yeah.
and then you have sociopath,
Yeah.
narcissists.
Yeah.
You can start getting some questions. You're like, you actually mean that? Oh.
Yeah, there's definitely like
Charting.
there's moments in therapy where I feel like, and we call this countertransference, where
Sure.
we realize that our opinion is in the room. And that's natural for every therapist
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we're
yeah.
humans. So we sit there and there's times where I'm like, oh man, but then I have to go and really reflect to myself and be like, why? Like, what was I
Yeah.
feeling? And sometimes, again, that means that I have to go to therapy
Sure.
myself and
And
be
process that.
like, this thing came up.
Yeah.
And so I think it's all just relative, but there's definitely times where I have to, and that's why because I'm not licensed yet, we have supervision. So in confidential settings,
Oh, for sure.
we're able to go take it and be like, I don't understand.
Sure.
And
Oh, absolutely.
that's been really helpful.
Sure.
Well, I mean, that's how you grow. I
Mhm.
mean, if you weren't
Correct.
able to weigh what you've got going on and you run into a situation that, I mean, let's just look at the basic society. Situations and questions that you have to answer are not questions you had to answer 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're not even questions that were even talked about 10 years ago.
It's true.
And some for the better and some for the, why the crap are we talking about that?
Mhm.
And so I think that, I think as we continue to develop as a society and we're trying to figure out what we actually are, I think we run into the same things. And I think having that confidant is super, super
Mhm.
important.
100%.
And so you mentioned before, I mean, this is off camera, but you mentioned you think everyone needs to go and see a therapist. Expound on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that, so I consider myself more of a long-term therapist, where
Sure.
some therapists are like, we work on the problem, you're
Yeah.
out, and that's great. There's
Yeah.
definitely a need for that.
Sure.
I like to have that relationship, and I just find that my clients stay. And that doesn't mean they might be coming every week, but they have that consistency. We call it the open door policy. But I think that for most people, they don't spend enough time actually thinking about their experience and what they're feeling.
Sure.
And so to have 50 minutes where they're just being heard and
Mhm.
understood, or, we're reflecting back like what we're hearing them say about the situation,
Yeah.
like that's critical because we're just so fast. And so they have to sit there and they're not on their phones. Like they're just sitting there talking about themselves.
Kidding.
I think the magic in what you just said is for 50 minutes them being heard.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Being heard is the magic of communication.
Yeah.
It's not your ability to talk. It's your ability to shut up and hear someone out,
Mhm.
right? And so few, unfortunately, in today's day and age, they so few have that, right?
Yeah.
Because I'll even notice it. I'll even notice it, and I'll be in a conversation with somebody, and you hear their phone go off and you're in the middle of a conversation and they look down at their phone for a second, you're just kind of like, oh wait, you're like, oh no, you're fine. It's like if we are in a headspace to be that distracted, and that's with our friends, how is that going to be in the relationship setting, the school setting, the work setting, right? So if that individual goes unheard at work and potentially unheard at home and unheard in their friendships, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And there's suicide right now.
Oh yeah.
So high. Drug addiction, so high. If we, from a societal standpoint, understood, hey, 2 years, one mouth, let's do some math.
Yeah.
Oh,
You should
totally.
be listening twice as much as you're seeking to speak. The goal, what a perfect world it would be if we didn't need therapists.
Yeah.
Truly.
No,
right? If everybody learned how to communicate.
I would love to be unemployed.
Truly.
I'm like, the world
I
would
wish,
be better.
I wish things like I wish things like the food bank didn't have to exist. I wish things like Salvation Army didn't have to exist. Therapy didn't have to exist. Because if we were able to communicate our feelings, our thoughts, our emotions, and then the magic is being heard out and understood by those who we love, we wouldn't have to seek that out.
Oh, totally.
But unfortunately, we're in a society where we're not quick to listen, slow to speak, like it says that we should be.
Yeah,
for sure.
So cheers. You're literally changing lives, and you're literally saving lives without knowing it. So cheers.
We always say, or what I say with my couples is listening to understand, not to respond. Because a lot of times when we talk about it, the minute they find something that they're like, oh, I disagree, then they're just sitting in that. They're like, oh, I want to respond to this.
Yeah.
And their spouse might be like spewing their like emotional thoughts. And then the person comes in and they respond. And it's like the first like thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's like, well, you missed like
And you can see
all of that. And so we have a tool that I use with every one of my couples, and it's so critical. It's called the comfort circle, and it's like a document.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, no, this is like, we are going to force you to listen and to also share. And so there's a speaker and a listener, and the speaker like tells what they're upset about, and the listener literally just says, I hear you saying you're upset about that. And then they're talking about their feelings, and then we're able to go like, did you feel this as a child? And what we find is that like they're able to get deep, and then the person that's listening is actually understanding, and the person that's speaking is feeling fully like comfortable to share. And watching it in the room, like regardless of how argumental the couple was, they're like suddenly like holding hands and looking to each other. And I'm like, and they're just like, this is amazing. And I'm like, this is just communication.
Yeah.
And like, this is amazing.
But this is amazing. Yeah. Wow, this feels so good.
This whole
You're like,
time?
we've been married for 20 years. We've never had such a great.
You mean I just had to use my mouth and words vomit out of it? That's it?
And it's like,
That's
it's
awesome.
cool because it's just like, you can see there's moments where the listener wants to share, like either positive or negative, but they're just like, no, I hear you say this. And if they don't get it right, we go, did you get it all? And then the speaker is able to go, no, actually, you just missed this one thing.
Sure.
And so they're really able to clarify, like, did you hear what I meant?
Yeah. Well, active listening is a skill. And it is something like I've even pushed myself on an active listening, because it's not just metabolizing the information. Because what'll happen is I'll be listening to somebody talk, and I'll literally listen to the words and go, okay. And my brain will go, hey, you remember the bat? Did you brush your teeth this morning? I'm like, I totally
Did I leave the oven?
And then I start like rubbing my teeth, and all of a sudden they're still talking, and I look back and I'm like, oh,
I missed the meat and the potatoes.
right,
Could we dial back?
exactly. So that's something you have. It's diligence. You have to teach your brain. Hey, listen, focus, stop. And I'm like, nope, I'll think about
Squirrel.
that later. Nope,
Yeah.
nope, got to put that to the
And
side.
the minute you're hurt by that person, you're thinking about like the way they hurt you. So they could be like, oh, I'm really just needing some time to go hang out with Sally. And then the person's like, I hear that you hate me and you don't want to spend time with me. It's like,
what?
Well, no, that's not what they said.
Sally's
like,
a friend.
Yeah. And so it's like, if
Thanks,
there's
Sally.
that
Sally.
too, if there's that too, you're like, okay, wait, no, like meet in the middle.
Yeah.
I always like to.
What did you say? What did you hear?
I always like to ask something that I've always done is I like to ask questions.
Mhm.
If I don't understand something or I need clarity, just to kind of balance it out. And to me, that it also helps validate the person that you're having an active conversation with.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you ask somebody, I like to start it with a question. How is your day? I'm fine. Okay, you replied without the ability for a question to be made, which means you don't want a conversation.
And fine's not a feeling.
Yeah.
Effed up, insecure, narcissistic, and emotional. Got it. But when you go, okay, how are you? Conversation's continuing. And so it's this give and take. People don't realize the power of asking one question, asking a question, and then listening to the answer.
Yep.
And then, oh, that's interesting to know that. And then asking another question. Why do you think podcasts are a big deal?
Yeah.
That's literally all we do is we sit in a room and we ask questions.
Yeah.
And that person replies. And then they'll put it on in the background. They're like, wow, it sounds like normal. And it's like,
why is there so much magic there? Because it's conversation. Oh my gosh.
But I mean, just think about that. We went from television being the medium of fast. You're being told what to think. You're being told what marketing. You're being told. Now it's, no, you're getting to hear a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's more pleasing because you're craving having a conversation with someone.
100%. It scratches a deeper itch. Truly. I think that's like a lot of the nature of why podcasts and like just from listening standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it scratches a deeper itch than just watching a movie because we seek connectivity.
Yep.
Right? If from my, and some viewers will agree and some won't, if we are built, designed, and created for communion and communication with God, with our creator, with people around us, if we don't have it, or let's just say for 2 years we're forced to stay home.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
No wonder we're in such a bad place in the wake of that.
Oh yeah.
Because we were told not to do what we were created to do. So it's like you're seeing all these statistics with drug use and against suicide and all these things, and you're kind of like, well, yeah, absolutely. It's sad to say, but you're like, of course that's so high because we pulled away connectivity, we pulled away communication, we pulled away connection in general. So from a therapy standpoint, my brother is he's in his master's right now in therapy. He works in a clinical setting out in Calusa. So what's funny is having a brother as a therapist. This is the black and white of it. It's like, I'll ask my brother Chris a question, and then like when he starts to give like a deeper answer, I'm like, oh, we're on the clock right now, aren't we? And as soon as he's like, well, why do you feel that way? You're just like, you're doing it, aren't you?
You're like,
should I lay down? Is this?
There's a couch over here and a
this
chair.
safe space?
Can we just migrate, please? I think that'll be the safest bet.
And he'll jokingly, like, we have this like family text that's mostly just hilarious and memes sending.
Yes.
But somebody will say something and then like Chris will chime in with like, well, how did that make you feel? Well, most like, satirical. And we're like, okay. But that's awesome. You working in a therapy setting, and you having your heart in the right spot. Cheers to you being a light in this community.
Oh, absolutely.
Because so many people that don't have that family member or confidant or friend, if the second you're alone on an island and you're going through anything, it's the devil's ability to come and get us.
Oh, totally.
Right? So you being in a spot where Joe, part of communication is waiting your turn. Like,
ouch.
I'm playing.
Ouch. What I was gonna say is the biggest thing is we suppress.
Yeah.
When we should address, right? We suppress the feelings that we have.
Yeah.
It brings up a memory. I was 19 years old. Quick little story. Working at the hospital. This was just started the job. It's 3 weeks in, and my first time taking a dead body to the morgue. That was part of my job.
Yeah.
Now I'd been to funerals, but I never.
Yeah.
You don't hang out with the body.
Yeah.
That's not something that you do.
Yeah.
You're not filling out paperwork and all that stuff. And I remember going in there, and it was such a polarizing experience that I didn't know the person. It was just this, didn't know anything that was going on, and I'm just in there, and everything in me is just screaming discomfort, and I'm like, I don't know how to process any of these emotions. I don't know how to process anything that's going on. So, and the guys I'm working with are like, yep, get a good look. This is what it's like, and trying to like toughen me up for the job. Because it's part of the job. Yeah. So we get him up, we take him downstairs, and I remember the whole day I kept seeing the images of what I just saw and flashing in my brain. I was just like, oh my gosh, and like trying to process that. And I went to youth to serve, And I'm going to the youth group to help out, and all of a sudden the pastor starts talking about giving your cares to Jesus. Now I've heard the sermon like a million times. I'm like, of course, give your cares to Jesus. He's got it. I start weeping because it had a deeper meaning, because there was an experience that I couldn't control.
Yeah.
Overwhelming me with emotions that I didn't know how to deal with. And so after this, like, he starts talking, I just start crying. I cry for like 40 minutes straight, just trying to process, because nothing prepares you for that. Nothing prepares you for seeing somebody dead. It's not, as much as it's part of life, it's not something we like. Right? And the pastor came up to me after, goes, "You all right?" And we sat and talked for 20 minutes. And I literally wept. And so I can see, I haven't had a therapist, but I can see how there's been experiences that I've had that through the grace of God, that he's allowed me to be in the right place at the right time, to be around the right people, so that I could make it through. And that's the power of community. And I think that as we realize that isolation doesn't work.
Yep, it's not the way forward.
And, oh, you mean I can just talk to somebody? I think that is what everyone has been asking for in churches, praying. I pray that people would wake up. Well, the biggest thing people need to do is just talk with each other.
Yeah.
As soon as you realize the world doesn't revolve around you.
Yeah.
And you realize the power of your words.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. When you said you were younger, that you're like, I always wanted to get into therapy. Was there a moment or something, somebody said something that pulled that out?
I wanted to touch on that as well.
No. So I went to an arts, like, high school, middle school experience, and I had stuff happen in my own personal life that I think they had like recommended therapy, like, after my mom passed away. But I was just like, no. And I mean, I had people I was talking to, but they weren't therapists.
No. For
And so I remember in high school, I looked at like my guidance counselor, and she was so sweet, and like probably the reason I went to college, honestly.
That's awesome.
And I was talking with her, and I was just sharing like what I want to do. And I don't even fully remember. I just remember being like, I really want to like help people like with their problems, I think is what I said at some. And she was like, "Oh, well, you want to do psychology?" And I was like, "What's I didn't know that word existed." And then she's
that like the movie Psycho?
I was like, what? And she was like, because they don't, at least in my school, I think they do now. They didn't have psych. So I was like, what's that? And she explained to me, she's like, she had done psychology. Now it's a different credential and all that to be a school counselor. But she was talking about it, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. And so I just was like, from then on, I looked at schools that had psych. Now, thankfully, every school has psychology. But I was like, that's it. That's it. That's what I want to do. And then I was with psych. I mean, you can do a lot of things because it's just learning how to understand people.
100%.
But I knew I wanted to be a therapist. And that's why I was like, okay, I have to get my master's. And that's why I did it right away, because I knew if I took a break, it was not going to happen, just for my brain. But then, I actually did my credits really quick. And so I already had a dance minor. And then they're like, you could take classes for fun.
Yeah.
I'm kind of type A. So I was like, I don't really want to do that. It needs to be like for something.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think like my junior year, I added sociology because I was like, well, I might as well study the world that the people are living in.
100%.
And that was actually really cool to understand that. But to answer your question, probably my school counselor just like explained to me what it was.
Have you ever since then sought her out?
Yeah, I still have her on like Facebook.
I was gonna say she has to know that you now have your master's.
Oh, totally.
Practicing.
I think she lives in like Chico now, but I think I sent her like a grad announcement. Like we've talked a little bit.
Amazing.
Yeah. To how fulfilling would that be for her to know the impact she had on you is now stemming into your impact on others.
Oh, totally.
That's incredible. That's so cool.
I think what's really cool about it too is you didn't have the words to know what you wanted to do. And as soon as you were like, that's it.
Psychology, huh?
That's that. Thank you for giving me the word that now is something I want to pursue.
Oh, totally.
100%.
I think I think we're in an oversaturation of knowledge all the time. We have all this knowledge, but because we hear all these words and we don't actually know what they mean, as soon as we simplify something down, it's like, oh yeah, no, that's what I want.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I think if we can do that again, because we're at a point where we're not doing that, I think if we can do that again, a lot of issues we have will disappear.
Oh, totally. I mean, I took Psych 101, which is like the intro
Sure.
psych class, I think my freshman year. And I was sitting there and I was just like, this makes sense. Because psychology is so just like, you don't learn about it and then like leave it in the classroom. It's not like,
No, it's every day.
you know, some topic where I don't like math, but it's not like chemistry where you're like seeing it and then you see it a little bit. It's like you learn it, you learn it, and then you see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Like you would learn it in the classroom, you'd walk out and you're not necessarily thinking about it and you're like, oh, that's what that is. Like you're
Yeah.
able to just like
Yeah.
grasp it. And so
100%.
I'm like, I know it's a requirement for most gen eds, but I'm like, it should be
Sure.
because you
Sure.
need to learn it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then the application is everywhere. I mean, you'll hear about, or from a friend of a friend of a friend, oh yeah, my relationship didn't work out, and then you learn quickly it's their inability to communicate, and you're like, well, yeah, of course.
Well, yeah, well, and it's even in, I mean, just pattern recognition. Okay,
Yeah.
I have been in 9 relationships, and they all have failed because of the same factor.
Because I'm trying to fix me via someone else.
Somebody else is the problem, or maybe, I don't know, maybe I got something to do with it. I'm just saying, maybe,
Yeah,
Possibly.
yeah.
could be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also think that we put too much. I think the power of therapy and having people around you that you can talk to freely and being able to express yourself is super powerful. But I also see that everyone thinks a relationship is going to fix X
No.
problem. And it's like, no, that's not how it works.
It just amplifies them.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, to
You
be
don't
very
change when you get into a relationship.
to be very transparent, I mean, I was told all throughout church, oh, you're going to get in a relationship and all of your lust issues, anything you like, pornography, that's all going to go away when you get married. It's like,
Nope.
oh, no, not in any way,
Mm-mm.
because you're creating a false facade. And so consistently we were told that. Just do this and this will work.
Mm-mm.
Just work 40 hours a week and you'll be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Just, and then you go, no,
Yeah.
no, I'm not.
There's more layers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not as simple as
You have to get to the root. I think, and you know, you mentioned it, but one thing that I see of, because I work in a church and
Sure.
so
Yeah.
and we work in the faith, is a lot of people struggle with lust, pornography, or masturbation. And
Sure.
they don't understand the science behind why they're struggling with it. Like,
Sure.
you know, we can look at it from a Christian perspective, but also you're releasing a bonding hormone when you engage in those things.
100%.
So you're doing it because you want to bond. Okay, if I can get to the root of that, can we heal that
Sure.
with, if you don't, you're choosing not to use those things, heal it in a different way. But they don't understand. They're just like, I don't want, and I'm like,
No.
okay,
Yeah.
but you're trying to bond. You're feeling disconnected. You're trying to bond.
Well, it makes me feel good. I was like, yeah, no, of course it makes you feel good. I think that if we're in the pursuit of what only makes us feel good,
Scary place.
nobody would ever go to the gym. Nobody would ever go to work. Nobody
Yeah.
would have any conversation. Conversations are uncomfortable. You can get to a point in a conversation where you're like, I don't want to be here,
Yeah.
right? And so if we were just to pursue what makes us feel good,
Yeah.
and so I look at the stats on that. I mean, if you're hearing it for the first time, I'm not a fan of pornography, people. I think it degrades you and degrades the people. OnlyFans is disgusting and it's destroying our society. I'll say it on the bleachers. I have no issue saying that. Doesn't mean that you're a disgusting person.
No.
It means that you have stuff you're figuring out.
Yeah.
But I think that we condone things in the shadows because they're in the shadows. And then if then the shadows go, no, we want to come to light. And it's like, no, you're in the shadows for a reason.
Yeah.
And I think that it's easy for us to go, oh, well, you're a Christian, so you don't understand. It's like, no, let's just go into mechanics of the body, like you were saying, the bonding mechanism, releasing endorphins. If all you do your whole day is release endorphins, you never do anything to actually earn those endorphins.
Yeah.
You're actually training yourself that everyone's going to give everything to you.
Yeah.
That you don't have.
Extremely selfish.
It's self-serving.
And
all the way through.
we're working towards that being so much quicker. It's why
Yep.
TikTok is so
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, I've people addicted to it.
Yep.
I probably watch TikTok too much, but it's the videos are short and
Yep.
they're fast. And now you have people watching them on like 0.3 speed and they're getting the same amount of endorphins from a TikTok video that they were getting from a YouTube video that
Yep.
they were
Mhm.
getting from a movie.
Yep.
And so
Yeah.
now, of course, they need more endorphins because their tolerance is higher.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So they're just
Yeah.
doing that. And then
Yeah.
you can talk about what that does to your mental health.
So
It's a
you're-
whole other
Yeah.
thing.
So you're saying we're drug addicts?
We'll need
Got it.
we'll need another segment with you
Yeah.
if we're gonna go that deep.
Oh my gosh,
into
yeah.
it.
Okay, so if somebody's looking for some help and they want to
Yeah.
reach out to you, how can they get your info?
Yeah, so I currently work at Soul Care, which is at Bridgeway Church, so they can go on that line.
Cool.
And then hopefully within like probably by the end of this year,
Sure.
I will be licensed. That's the goal. And then I don't know fully what I'll do, but probably private practice. I'm just kind of discerning where that will be. I
Sure.
currently work not where I live. So
Gotcha.
Sure.
That makes it difficult.
yeah.
Sure.
Awesome.
Thank you for taking the time.
Of
I
course.
think this has been for myself included. It's been super eye opening. I love your take on it. I love the underlying. It comes back to identity.
Yep.
Comes back to self-love and knowing yourself.
Yep.
And then seeking out what is truth, what is foundational, what is appropriate and inappropriate boundaries to create a whole person makes them better in a relationship, better in a friendship,
Yep.
better in a romantic relationship,
Totally.
so on and so forth. So thank you for being here this morning.
Yeah, thank you. I think this was a great thing you guys are doing.
Cheers. We appreciate it.
Thank you for checking out the Cam and Joe Show.
If you guys are liking our content so far, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can also listen to us on Spotify.